Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a simple budget and also give you some tips on how to stick with that budget. I do not remember the first time that I made a budget, but it was probably in high school. A very simple one too, because I got a very small monthly allowance and I spent it on a cell phone. Don't judge me too harshly, I was a teenager. In spite of that questionable first budget, I learned a lot about finances from my parents. My parents lived very frugally, and it wasn't until I was older that I realized that my parents were donating a good chunk of their incomes to ministries and charities that they supported. I really admired them for that. But in order to do wonderful things like that, you need to be in control of your finances. For many people, finances can be really scary. It always seems that we never have enough money, or that money always disappears from our accounts before we know it. This is why having a budget is important. Budgets can stop the dreaded cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. And after living with a successful budget for a while, you may realize that finances are no longer that horrible, scary monster you avoided in years past. This is my hope and goal for everyone. It is empowering to discover that you have control of your finances instead of having your finances control you. Now first, I want to encourage you not to think of a budget as a negative, joy-sucking entity that overly restricts your money flow. A budget is a positive tool that is meant to empower and equip you to reach your financial goals. You are meant to control money, not the other way around. Watching this video and deciding to make a budget is the best first step towards achieving financial success. Well done for making that choice. Your future self will definitely thank you for it. Before we get started with making your budget, we need to briefly discuss what you need to include in it and how to arrange it. There are an infinite number of ways to arrange a budget. If you do a simple Google search, you will be overwhelmed by the numerous ways to arrange a budget. In this video, I will be sharing my system of budget organization. I have developed a system over many years of transforming our budget to something that worked better for our household and our financial goals. If you find that this budget organization does not work for you, that is totally okay. There are plenty of other ways to choose from, but do not get bogged down by the specifics. A budget is simply showing you what your income is, what you spend your money on, which are your expenses, and what money, if any, you have left over. So let's start by listing the sections you would need to include in your budget. Listing your income is honestly your first step, which makes sense because your income provides you with the money you spend on your expenses. Now this section will be the main bulk of your budget. Necessary expenses are the things you absolutely can't live without. Think of it like this. What would make your life impossible to live? What would make your life uncomfortable to live? Add the expenses that will help you live a possible and somewhat comfortable life into your budget. Don't get greedy. Be realistic and honest. Well, you could have probably have guessed that this section was coming up because we just discussed having a necessary expenses section. These are the things you absolutely can live without. These are the items that make your life very comfortable, or maybe too comfortable. Whatever the case may be, expenses that are left when you determine your necessary expenses will go here. Everyone has some form of debt. I currently have an interest-free family loan that I need to pay back. Including your debt in your budget is important because debt causes your net worth to go in the negative direction while you want to move in the positive direction. If you want to be financially free, you can't have any debt holding you down. Also, in reality, this money is already spent, meaning you need to work your butt off in order to pay it off as soon as possible. Having it visible in your budget will keep you aware of your debt and focus to pay it off. Saving for the future is honestly what most Americans tend to forget about. They are so wrapped up in the present, probably for good reason, that they can't imagine getting through the next year. I encourage everyone to break out from just focusing on the present. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you want to see yourself in 20 years? And what are the financial goals you will need to set to realize those dreams? Emergency funds, retirement funds, and short and long-term goals will go in this section. Many people find it important to help others using financial means, such as donating money to their local churches or their favorite charities. If this is something that is important to you, it is good to add this section into your budget. Do you already donate money to certain organizations? Prepare to add that in. Or do you desire to donate some money? Completing a budget will help you determine whether you are able to donate some money and the amount you are able to donate. So let's talk budget organization. The way that I organize my budget is to order each expense section from the most important to the least important. The most important being at the top of your budget after you list your income, and your least important being at the bottom. So there is an order that I do prefer right now, and I will post it on the screen somewhere here. However, the cool thing about this budget is that you can arrange the sections however you see fit. If you feel that savings is not as important as your unnecessary expenses, rearrange the sections. And if you feel like your debt payoff section should come after your savings section, by all means rearrange the sections. This budget is customizable. Arrange it in the way that works for you, your household, and your financial goals. And when life changes or you make new financial goals, rearrange it again and again. So that being said, I do want to explain why I arrange the budget the way I do. Arranging your budget in this way prepares you for when your life hits a bump in the road. And we all know that tends to happen. Whether your spouse suddenly passes away, or you get in a work accident and can't work for 6 months, or even you lose your one stable job because a crazy pandemic shuts down our world. Bad things happen, but don't worry, with this budget, you are ready. When negative things like this happen, incomes take a hit or are completely eliminated. If that happens, you need to be immediately going through your budget and determining what needs to be temporarily cut away. Remember me saying that you will need to arrange your budget from the most important to the least important? Ordering your budget in this way will give you an easy, quick roadmap on what you can cut away in a pinch. So when you are needing to cut away things from your budget, start from the bottom of your budget, your least important section, and work your way up. So in the way that I arrange my budget, unnecessary expenses will be the first items to get cut if our income decreases or disappears. So when you make your decisions on what sections are the most important and what sections are the least important, do keep the worst case scenario in mind. However, this budget organization can also be used for other reasons as well, not just the world's apocalypse. It can also be used to create a more rigorous debt payoff plan or savings plan. Want to pay off your debt by the end of the year? You can achieve that by temporarily cutting back, starting with the expenses at the bottom of your budget. Wanting to save up for a tropical vacation for your next spring break? You can also achieve that by this bottom to top process. Pretty cool, huh? Now that we discussed what sections you will need to include in your budget and how to arrange it, let's write it down or put it on a spreadsheet on your computer. Make sure you gather all of your financial documents. This will include pay stubs, bank statements, credit card statements, monthly bills, and receipts. For the example in this video, we'll be completing a monthly budget. This is the most common way to arrange a budget. And we'll be arranging the sections in the way that I arrange my personal budget. But do remember that the placement of the expense sections is customizable to better reflect your needs and your goals. So let's get started. The first item you'll need to include in your budget is your monthly income. Gather your most recent pay stubs and look at how much money you are receiving per paycheck. Make sure you are looking at the after-tax amounts, which is the amount that gets deposited into your bank account after taxes are taken out, also known as take-home pay. So for our example, if you get paid twice a month and you make $1,500 per paycheck, your total monthly income will be $3,000. If you have a variable income, meaning you don't receive the same amount per paycheck, look at your pay stubs for the past year and determine the minimum amount you get paid in a month. You are going to use this income amount to create your budget. That way, you'll be preparing for your worst month instead of making your budget using your best month, and being caught off guard and unprepared if your income decreases in a particular month. Now that you know how much money you receive per month, you are going to put it at the top of your budget like you see here. The next section is the debt payoff section. If you are like most Americans, you probably have some form of debt, whether it be student loans, a mortgage, or credit card debt. Whatever debt you have, make a line for it in your budget, along with the amount you would like to pay towards your debt each month, like you see here. For our example, let's pretend you are trying to pay off credit card debt and have decided to put down $100 each month. And some of you are probably asking, how do I determine how much money to put towards my debt each month? Well, I'm not going to get very detailed in this video because I will probably do a video in the future specifically talking about debt repayment. However, here is a simple way to approach your debt payoff plans. Decide on a date that you want to have your debt completely paid off, and calculate the monthly payment amount you will need to commit to in order to do that. Do not forget to factor in any interest rates if they apply to your particular debt. Also, make sure that the amount that you have chosen is more than the minimum payment required. Of course, be realistic, but definitely challenge yourself to pay off that debt as soon as possible. Now on to listing your necessary expenses that you pay each month in your budget. As I mentioned earlier, only the expenses that you absolutely cannot live without go in this section. Really think long and hard about whether a certain expense is a need or a want. Opinions on what expenses are needs and what expenses are wants will vary from person to person. Some people may deem cable or video streaming services as necessary, while people like me label them as unnecessary. Some people may deem transportation costs as necessary, while people who live in a highly walkable area like the city do not. Your budget is personal to you and to you only, so make sure you make these decisions on your own. So that being said, necessary expenses usually includes, but is not limited to, housing, groceries, and utilities like electricity, water, and gas. I know there are many more necessary expenses that you will need to include in this section, but for simplicity's sake, I only included the 3 I mentioned in our example budget. So under the heading of necessary expenses, give each of your determined necessary expenses a line, like I did here. For expenses that are not always the same from month to month, determine the maximum cost of the expense and put that cost amount in your budget. Utilities is a good example of this. Look at your utilities bills for the past year and find the largest bill you had. Round up that number and you now have the cost amount you need to put in your budget. For expenses that are paid every couple of months, like insurance costs, this is what you will need to do. Let's pretend that you pay $500 for car insurance every 6 months. Take $500 and divide it by 6. This gives you $83.34. Take that $83.34 and put it as your monthly cost for car insurance. That way you will have saved up enough money to pay your car insurance in full when it renews. So for any expense that is not paid monthly, but rather every couple of months, take the amount you need to pay and divide that value by the number of months that elapse in between payments. Now let's talk about savings. Saving for your future self is very important, and many Americans tend to forget to account for it in their budgets. Just so you know, I won't get super detailed in this section either, as I will probably do a video specifically on savings in the future. So for our example, we are going to pretend that you're working on filling up your emergency fund. You plan to stash away $100 per month. This money is only meant to be used in financial emergencies. Examples of emergencies would be an unexpected medical bill popping up, your car breaking down suddenly, or needing to purchase a last-minute ticket to fly back home due to a family member passing away. In order to be prepared when unexpected financial events happen, you need to have an emergency fund. Now let's briefly talk about retirement funds. Don't think you can skip this line. You need to have a retirement fund as well. You are eventually going to get old and will need that money. Don't expect that your family, your kids, or the government will be able to assist you fully. You need to take care of this for yourself. If you work for a company that sponsors a 401k retirement plan, you may already be socking away money towards a retirement fund. Do talk to your HR department to be sure. If that is the case, well done. This money automatically comes out of your paycheck, so you don't need to add it again into your budget. And if that is not the case, you have some work to do. Schedule a meeting with your HR department to get your retirement contribution set up. Now, if you don't work for a company that sponsors a retirement fund, you can still contribute to a retirement account on your own. These are usually called IRAs. Whatever the case may be, you need to be contributing at least some money into a retirement account. For our example, you have decided to contribute $100 a month to an IRA. While saving for emergencies and retirement are the most important things to save for, you may have other savings goals that you can also put in this budget section. For our example, you need a new computer and want to start saving for it. You decide to save $50 a month for this financial goal. Short-term or long-term saving goals are great things to have for 2 reasons. First, saving up for an item instead of just buying it right away with a credit card will set you up for financial success and not put yourself in debt. And second, assigning your money a goal will continue to motivate yourself to stick with your budget. On to the next section, which is giving contributions. Many people enjoy giving away a portion of their income to charities, ministries, or organizations they would like to support. If this is something that is important to you and would like to include it in your budget, by all means do so, like you see here. And if this is something that is not important to you or are currently unable to give away money, do feel free to skip over this section. No judgment. This is your budget. You are always able to add it back in the future. So in our example, you have decided to give $20 a month to your home church and $20 a month to your local food pantry. Do not stress over determining what amount of money you should give away. Just give away what you can and feel led to do. All charity organizations appreciate whatever amount of money is donated to them by individuals, big or small. We have finally come to the last section of our budget, the unnecessary expenses section. Whatever expenses were left when you determined which expenses were necessary will go here. These are the expenses that you can live without if you had to. Unnecessary items may include, but are not limited to, restaurants, gym memberships, and subscription services like Netflix and Audible. Once again, opinions on what expenses are needs and what expenses are wants will vary from person to person. So for our example, you are paying $9 a month for Netflix, $15 a month for Audible, and $50 for a gym membership. Make sure you include every single unnecessary expense in this section. Missing certain small expenses like getting a coffee from Starbucks every morning may cause you to fall off your set budget. So make sure you include a coffee fund for that morning latte. Well done! You have gotten to the end of your budget. You have written down every single expense you have and can now see where your money goes in a month. The last step to completing your budget is to calculate whether your current expenses put you in the red, meaning in debt, or in the black, meaning you have extra money left over. So take all of your expenses that you listed in your budget and subtract them from your monthly income. You can see that I already did this in our example budget. Please remember that I made our example budget very simple, so the leftover money calculated here is not particularly realistic. If you find that this calculated amount is a negative number, this means you are spending more than you receive. You will need to go through your budget and cut back on certain expenses. Your budget should definitely not be pushing you into debt. If you find that this calculated amount is a positive number, congratulations, you have completed your budget correctly and have some extra money you can add to whatever section you choose. Consider adding this money to either the debt payoff or savings sections first, before adding it to other sections. This way you can reach your financial goals even faster. I do want to say though that having a little extra money that is not assigned to a section in your budget is helpful, especially when starting out. You may have forgotten a certain expense and will need to add it into your budget when you discover it. Having some wiggle room will make sure you don't fall out of your planned budget so quickly. Good job! Now you have a workable budget that is written down and planned out. Now you will need to stick with it. Here are my top tips to help you be motivated and disciplined while living under a budget. Tip number 1, have financial goals. Why did you create your budget in the first place? Did you want to stop living that stressful paycheck to paycheck lifestyle? Or do you have a financial goal you would like to reach, like getting out of debt or buying a home? Having and remembering your financial goals will continue pumping you with the motivation needed to continue living under your planned budget. Consider making a vision board to display in your office or your living room, or just simply write down your goal on multiple post-it notes and leave them all over your apartment. These items will continue to remind you again and again why you are doing what you are doing. Tip number 2, keep track of your finances on a regular basis, preferably once a week. I know this sounds like a lot of work, but this tip is really helpful, trust me. We spend our money practically every day, so your finances are constantly in flux. And because of that, you will need to keep track of your finances in real time, basically. Set a time, maybe during the weekend, to sit down and update your finances tracker. If you do not have one, now is the time to get one. Check on your bank account and your credit cards online and keep track on what you spent your money on during the week. When you do this weekly, you can make sure you are sticking with the allocated amounts you set for different expenses in your budget. If you notice you are reaching your limit for groceries, for example, you will know that you will need to dial back and probably take advantage of the sale items at your local grocery store next time you go. Or you may notice that you are out of the money you allocated for eating out at your favorite restaurants. If that is the case, it is time to dig into the back of your pantry and your refrigerator and make your meals for the rest of the month. Sticking to a budget will take discipline, but knowing where your money is going weekly can stop overspending in its tracks. Last tip, and the most important one in my opinion. Tip number 3. Know that your budget is not set in stone. Now, what do I mean by that? I do not mean that you can just decide not to follow your budget for a particular expense or, God forbid, the entire thing. What I mean is that if you realize your budget is no longer working for you, you can sit down and write a new one. Whether your budget needs a small adjustment, like for example, you realize you spend more money on public transportation in your city than you first realized, and you want to increase that money allotment. Or whether you need to do a complete overhaul of your budget because, for example, you got a different job that pays less. Well, we have reached the end of this video. I do hope you found this video helpful and informative. I did enjoy putting it together for those of you who need a helping hand when it comes to budgeting. If you have any questions or advice you would like to share with others, do consider commenting down below. I do wish everyone the best of luck with their finances. May you continue to find the motivation and discipline needed to achieve your own financial success. Take care, everyone.